Good morning, everyone. We're going to start our recording of a program called Introduction to Risk Management, Financial Risk and Agritourism Ventures. I'm Marianne Corrali, and we have been funded to offer this program across the Northeast. It is sponsored by the Northeast Extension Risk Management Education Program, and it is based on a grant that was written in 2015. We are programming from my association, Delaware County Cooperative Extension in Delaware County, New York. So I'm excited to bring this to you. We have had a good attendance to these agritourism programs, but I wanted to make sure that if you did not attend, that you were still able to access the information either on our website, at our YouTube video link, or from the materials will all be available on the Northeast Extension Risk Management Education website. So let's get started. So we like to get started by asking, why are you interested in agritourism? And we're going to take you through a variety of sort of self-searching kinds of things where we will probe you to answer questions regarding your existing business and what you hope to gain from this series. We have a survey which will be as part of the materials to give you sort of a search for yourself. Will this work for me? Is this something that I can do on my farm? And it's sort of an in-depth survey, and once you get that done, you will kind of see if you are well suited to the agritourism industry. This class is intended to help you explore your existing and your new idea for agritourism ventures. We want to extend to as many people as possible. And some of the work that you will do to develop a risk management plan will be done, after viewing this recording. We know how busy you are as farmers, so I'm trying to keep these sessions to 1 hour. And there will be 5 additional sessions, or 5 sessions in all, that will help you explore this whole concept of starting an agritourism venture on your farm. Risk management is also a hot topic, and any of your ag lenders want to see that you have done some work looking at the possibilities for your farm, but we also look at what can go wrong, and we mitigate those risks as we go along. And we help you mitigate those risks by teaching you how to mitigate those risks and who the experts are in those fields that will assist you along the way. So this is really taking a team approach. You will be working with people like your insurance company and others on your farm to mitigate risk in new agritourism ventures. And as we talk about agritourism, we will also talk about, what's popular and what's going on with agritourism. But like anything with risk, it could be high risk, high reward in these ag ventures, but we want to make sure that as much as possible that you don't risk the farm. So a little bit about the Northeast Extension Risk Management Education Group. We have these states in the Northeast that are part of this group, but there are several others around the United States in different groups. And every year we meet together across at a location somewhere in the United States, and we have a conference. And I'm hoping to be able to present this at the next national conference. Doing Zoom and tape presentations is not entirely new, But as far as farmers being able to get away and for whole days of education, we know that there needs to be some alternatives out there. So that was why we started this program, and hopefully you'll get something out of it. So risk management education in agriculture is really one of those fundamental things that USDA feels is necessary. And they put a huge effort behind it. And they really feel that we as extension personnel in every county and state in the United States need to do some focusing on risk management. And I've attended several of these conferences, and we learn so much from each other. So agritourism itself brings a unique set of risks when a farmer engages the public to visit the farm. A unique plan for you will help you develop a solid understanding of the risks on your particular farm and in your particular venture. So I talked a little bit about risk before, and risk is one of those things that when you think of, say, the stock market, you know, you can't make a profit unless you take a little risk. And in the stock market, there are levels of risk that you can consider. And it's good to evaluate those risks, yes, in the stock market, but when you're in your business yourself. And for each decision that you make, as you know, on a daily basis, there's a risk-return trade-off. So for an example, you say, well, I really need to get my hay in, but my corn isn't in yet either. So do I figure out how to do both together, which could be risky because you're going to be tired out and exhausted? Or do I do the high value crop first and wait on the other? So everybody has kind of an example I'm sure you could use on your farm. So risk really means there is a possibility of loss. You could lose money in the stock market. It could rain for 3 weeks and you could never get your corn in. So it's just one of those things to do some self-searching with the materials that we've offered here on a sort of a self-searching, is this agritourism venture good for me? What kind of a person am I? Do I like people coming to the farm? Do I like people in general? You know, so we'll go over all those things. Most farmers make decisions in a risky environment every day. They're very accustomed to risk. And we don't want to add more risk than you really need. We want to make sure you know how to mitigate those risks. And as you know, sitting behind a desk is less risky than farming. But many farmers, even though they're in a risky environment every day, they would not want to sit behind a desk. They want to be farmers. They want to find new ways to generate income. And that's what agritourism is all about. It's having another income stream to the farm. What is agritourism? So it's defined as travel or visit by the general public to a working farm or other commercial, agricultural, aquacultural, horticultural, or forestry operation for the purpose of enjoyment, education, or participation in agritourism activities. An activity is an agritourism activity whether or not the participant paid to participate in the activity or not. So these can include farming, historic activities, cultural, U-pick, wineries, tours, reenactments, farm processing demonstrations, collection of old farm tools, ag festivals, fee fishing, fee hunting, farm vacations, pumpkin patches, corn mazes, on-farm food sales, hay rides, crop art, trail riding, etc. It goes on. And it's only limited by your imagination. So you might not think that on-farm like a farm stand is agritourism, but it really is. When you put up that sign and invite the public to stop their car and pull over and visit your farm stand, that is agritourism. It's on farm ag sales, but there is risk related to that. And it's become kind of a, it can be a little bit what I would call troublesome at times when your insurance carrier or your zoning authority says you need to have this, 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 and this. And then all of a sudden, you know, you've got to, you know, make that place safe for cars, little kids getting out of the car, level, no holes, no potholes. You know, you have to be so careful. So anyway, we'll get to all that, but those are the definitions, and it is pretty broad. So, why are you interested in agritourism? You would like to diversify the income stream. Money comes into play quite a bit here. Diversify your product lines and markets. Generate new income, improve cash flow, educate visitors, help local community economic development, work at home, social rewards to having company, if you love company, you know. So it's important. A lot of people have varying reasons why they want to be in agritourism, and it just can run the gamut. So think about the reasons why you are interested in agritourism, and be honest about it. If it's not for income, what is it? And from there, you will develop your goals. Do you enjoy working with people? Are you a good communicator? Can you be firm with people and say, these are the areas you can go and these are the areas that you cannot go? And make sure that people understand the signs and things that where you want them to visit. Do you enjoy people, especially people that know nothing about farming? Are you patient? It takes a lot of patience sometimes. Are you organized? You've got to be super organized if you have a weekend events or weekend festivals. Can you adapt to change? This is, to me, agritourism has always been around, but more and more people want to find out where their food is coming from, or they want to introduce their children to farm animals or to how things are growing. And you'll answer the same question 1,000 times. So you really have to be one of those people that is engaging and willing to share what you do and how you do it, and answering the hard questions. Like, gee, why can't that animal run free instead of being in a barn or tied up? So we do get the hard questions, and that, you know, you have to have your answers well in advance. So included in the materials is a personal assessment, and I talked about that. Are you ready to host visitors on your farm? So I will continue on with the presentation, but afterwards, make sure you fill out this personal assessment, because it really, you have to be well suited to be successful. And in this session, since this is the financial session, we want you to start with the end in mind. Are you going to be successful? And we don't, if there are surprises, if there are people on your team that are like, no way are we going to do this, you know, and you have to have the cooperation of everyone on the farm team, you know, you may have to find another way to generate income. But I'm just saying, everybody has to be aware and either participate or not, but be behind you in this venture. So let's talk about people who come to farms and why they take vacations. They want to enjoy some family time together. They might want to get out into fresh air, improve their health, rest and relax, have an adventure, escape, to learn something, or to celebrate something. So people go away on vacations, and they have, one of the things that they do to prepare for vacation is they make sure they have enough money. And when somebody is showing up on your farm, whether they're staying overnight or just coming for the day, you have to be very businesslike about, okay, have a sign up that says the admission fee is blah, 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 blah. Collect the money. You may think about having a credit card machine. A lot of people don't carry cash anymore. And then make sure that you are fulfilling your promise in your advertising, whatever it was. Come and see the dairy cow and her calf, or come and zip line through our woods, whatever. So they're looking more and more for adventures. And when you think of places like very huge tourist attractions like Disney or any of those kinds of places, they advertise, they make claims as to what you will see, and you kind of have to stay with that theme of, here is what I said we would offer, and then follow up with the offer for the admission fee and make sure that there is truth in advertising. So what do you have to offer people on vacation? What is your idea? So hopefully you have some ideas. If not, we will have a lot of examples as we go through this of different enterprises that people can offer on their farm. One thing that I think I like to emphasize more than anything else is you have a lot of resources already. You don't think about it. Farmers have acres of open space that other people do not have. You have, in general, you have crops growing. In general, you may have animals. You have all these things that you might take for granted every day, but in reality, these people who are visiting or on vacation are looking for something that they don't have every day or they don't see every day. So with that in mind, you may be able to get something started with what you already have fairly cheaply and then build on it from there. So just to give an example, say you're a livestock operator and you don't think there's anything special about your farm, but how many people who live in cities or outside the country or who come to this country, how many people have maybe seen an animal give birth, or baby calves running around, or a dairy animal being milked? They don't have that connection. They have never experienced things that you experience every day. So think of starting with resources that you already have and building on it from there. So maybe you have some kind of a livestock operation and you might invite people to the farm in the spring when you are calving, but then maybe in the fall you could do some kind of a pumpkin thing. So people are looking for what we call experiences, and they want to experience, they want to touch things. They want to have their kids touch that calf. So it's exciting, and I think we're just touching the tip of the iceberg in agritourism in this country. So some of the risks And there are 5 areas of risk that we generally talk about when we're talking about risk in agriculture. These are general categories, and I will be focusing on one in each session: financial, production, legal, marketing, and human resource. We will study these 5 kinds of risk and find ways to mitigate each one in your particular operations. And I would also, feel free to send me emails if you're having trouble with something that we might be able to work on together. So we need to manage risk even in our current enterprises. But stabilizing farm income in this kind of ag environment that we've had in the last, say, 5 to 10 years is extremely critical, because prices go up and down, farm income goes up and down. It's hard to manage. But if you have something that you know will bring in X number of dollars every year, that is one thing you can count on to stabilize your farm income that might be doing this. We also want to reduce stress on you by managing risk well. We do not want to have litigation. Litigation costs money. It means that we have not done a good job managing risk. We want to promote our good reputation and brand. And we want to retain good employees and staff. And what we want to do with risk in this little graphic, number 1, yes, we want to reduce risk. But we will talk about ways to transfer risk to other entities. And that really is, a lot of that is with insurance. We're transferring the risk to the insurance company. We have a deductible, but they're going to feel that we've done a good job enough to cover us for catastrophic events, or just somebody backing into, a telephone pole. We do have to accept some level of risk, but we also want to avoid risks that are avoidable, such as not allowing people in risky areas where there might be, say, a body of water or a manure lagoon or something like that, where people could definitely get hurt. So we can avoid risk like that, and we'll talk about ways. But in the end, we do have to accept some risk for any venture that we decide to get into. So these are the 5 areas of risk to consider. We just talked about them. But on your farm, the division may be different. In other words, if you look at this, it looks like most of the risks are equal. But if you're not, if you don't have employees, some of your human resource risk might be less. If you are just having people, if you've got lots of financial reserves, your financial risk may be less. If you're borrowing the money, the financial risk is always more. If you're not bringing people to a production farm and you're just maybe having other kinds of activities that don't rely on, say, production of corn for corn maze, then maybe your production risk will be less. This is just a chart, but as you get more into your plan and your particular enterprise, you will realize that, well, I don't have much financial risk, but I have a huge marketing risk, or I have a huge legal risk. So we'll get to that. But I just want you to keep these 5 areas of risk in mind, just so you always have them in the back of your mind. So I mentioned that your risk might be different if you have a very sensitive crop. Your production risk is going to be much larger than the other risks. If you have fewer employees, your human resource risk will be less. The goals of this program are to give you the information and skills to develop a risk management plan tailored to your individual operation. Hopefully, someone in Extension can critique your plan. We will try to implement your risk management plan during the off season. So you may develop a plan now and you may not be up and running yet, but you have a plan, which is what we're trying to get you to do. Once you do these kinds of things, your insurance company will say, gee, they've done this, this, and this to reduce risk. They have a much better farm, say, than they did 4 or 5 months ago after mitigating all these perceived risks that they went over with you. And they will give you a lower rate, which is what we're all looking for. It'll make you more aware of risk in general. And you'll be able to promote risk to others in your industry. So I think it's all really important to do. Okay. So we're going to talk quite a bit about financial risk today. And it's probably the thing that is on your mind most often if you're in agriculture anyway, is finances. You know, it's if you're growing a commodity or a specialty crop or animals, financial risk is defined as the additional risk resulting from debt or threaten the financial health and stability of your business. You don't have to have debt to have financial risk. So as we borrow, however, or consider borrowing, or even if we're using our own money, you have the risk of losing that money. So whether you're borrowing or using your own resources, borrowing from yourself, say, every time you increase your leverage, you know, it's a possibility that you could lose. That's why I was, you know, talking about more, starting with the things that you have already and not thinking that you have to buy this zip line tomorrow. Start to see if anybody comes to the farm. Start small. You also have an opportunity cost of starting a new venture. In other words, you could be doing something else completely that's less risky, like sitting behind the desk and getting so much an hour. The big risk is getting to and from work usually. So, you know, I think about that maybe if this whole plan doesn't seem profitable or possible, that working down the road in the factory is definitely less risky. It's also less fun, but everybody has a different risk tolerance. So think long and hard about the kind of agritourism venture you are interested in, and then make sure that it's working for you personally. Financial risk encompasses those risks that threaten the financial health of the business and has 4 basic components: the cost and availability of capital, the ability to meet cash flow needs in a timely manner, the ability to maintain and grow equity, and the ability to absorb short-term financial shocks. So the cost and availability of capital has to do with the interest rate, but it also has to do with your credit rating, your personal history with money. Interest rates may be super low, but if your credit rating isn't up to par, you will not be able to borrow at those low rates. So that's something to think about and consider. Cash flow in some of these ventures, especially in the Northeast, are seasonal. Not all of them are seasonal, but consider a fall event at the farm, or something having to do with pumpkin patch, pumpkin picking, coming to the farm in the fall. That has a lot of expense all year until September, October, when people are starting to come to the farm. So you've got to be able to manage all the expenses with no income from that particular enterprise until the fall. So that's what I mean about cash flow. It might be wise after you get going is to have some kind of a spring or winter event in the snow, or at the planting time. And maintaining and growing equity is one of those things that, say you are investing in some kind of some equipment, it's going to take a while to pay that back. So if you're going to do hay rides or something involving a tractor or a large capital expense, you've got to make sure that if you do leverage that piece of equipment, that you will be able to make those payments in a timely fashion. And then short-term financial shocks can be things like a drought or excessive rain on your pumpkin area. How are you going to absorb that after you've spent all the money to put them in and tend them, or a flood or some kind of weather catastrophe? You just have to be able to maybe take out crop insurance, and we will talk about that, to help you through something like that. So insurance does play a key role, and it's not just liability. It's crop insurance. It's other forms of insurance to make sure that you can absorb a short-term financial shock. So up-to-date financial records, and all extension educators across the country are more than happy to work with farmers on getting your records in order. And it is not something that farmers enjoy doing. I like doing it, and most people in the financial world look at balance sheets as, it's just fun to do. I love doing balance sheets. I love doing cash flow. And you will love it after a while, after you get going, because it gives you a good picture of your current financial situation. And then if you are going to make a change, we talk about partial budgets, and we will more in this first session. They provide the basis to monitor your financial position and control expenditures and everything. And they really are a few very key statements: the balance sheet, which I call the own and owe, the statement of owner's equity, the income statement, and the cash flow statement. So we have to assess your current resources, and that's why we do the financial statements. We need to complete a business plan as part of your risk management plan for your agritourism venture. We need to be realistic about cash flow and analyze your current situation. We will look at partial budgets to see how a new venture will affect your current business. And we will do a SWOT analysis to determine where the weaknesses, strengths, opportunities, and threats can be. So whether it's a family member that says, I'm not helping and you cannot depend on me, that sort of thing we need to put in the original plan, so that you plan to hire this person over here to help you. Farmers are very busy. Some farmers are not interested in agritourism. And if the farm owners do not agree it is best to maybe think about either having a very small venture or doing something else to raise income. So it is something that does also take a lot of time and a lot of patience. So what are your financial risks? What could hold you back financially? The inability or unwillingness to borrow money. Sometimes it's not your credit rating. You just don't want to go into debt. Say you're 55 years old and your daughter wants to start some kind of an agritourism venture on your farm, and you're like, oh no, I don't think I want to do this. I don't want to borrow money. And that's a true problem, because at the same time, you may be getting ready for retirement. The interest rate has been climbing somewhat in the past couple of years. I don't think money is cheap at all. And it definitely is not, it is, related to risk. So if the bank feels that your horseback riding venture is going to be risky, they will not lend you money at a cheap rate. When you mention horse, all kinds of things go through their minds. When you mention hay rides, same thing. So even though interest rates may be 5 or 6%, that doesn't mean that you will get that rate. Can you afford to lose money? Think about that long and hard. Can you transfer financial risk to others? Hopefully. Can you afford the insurance and regulations? Regulatory things do cost money. Should you change to an LLC to reduce your financial liability and your legal liability? And what if your venture fails to capture an audience? So all of these things you must think about as we go along and prepare your risk management plan. A business plan can reduce risk by clarifying your goals. And you always create a mission statement. What is it that I want to do? You don't have to stress and take tons and tons of time, but you do have to create some kind of a mission statement that tells what you want to do. And you must have some kind of target audience with a marketing strategy. You will set SMART goals and find data and information to support your idea or plan. And then refine your product or service and define your customer. Describe your team, evaluate your resources, calculate your startup costs, and simulate cash flow in a projected cash flow analysis. And all these kinds of materials to do these things will be available on our website. You must plan to succeed and reduce risk. So once you get your financial analysis done, you will start your business plan. Even if you don't have to borrow the money, we suggest promoting it to an IDA or a bank, because somebody from the outside can point out things that you may have missed, or they may say, this is a really good idea. If you were looking for financing, I would finance this. Even if you don't need the money, to borrow the money, because using your own money, sometimes folks are myopic. They get an idea in mind and they are, they don't see anything else. So it is good to run it by extension personnel as well. IDAs are great because they're always reviewing plans, or any other kind of economic engine that you might have in your area. You need to also accept critique, and that's hard to do. But you may be myopic looking at your dream plan. And and it's good to have other opinions and be confident in your completed plan. You know, don't be wishy-washy. If you've done the work and looked at everything, you should be able to be confident and to the bank or whoever you are promoting it to. So the elements of the financial business plan, we talked about the balance sheet, own and owe. And I really like the USDA Farm Service Agency forms. They're available online. And because they're tailored to agriculture, they can be very good for your original balance sheet because they're farm oriented. For your new enterprise, you may choose a different type of a balance sheet because you're going to have, I'm not sure, but you could have other kinds of things that don't fit into the farm balance sheet. But try those forms and they are also available to you. And a cash flow projection is also one of those forms. And a partial budget, which we developed here at Extension. All extensions have some kind of a partial budget. And that's an important part to show what is going to change by adding this venture. So getting back to the balance sheet, it has to have a specific date. So if I was doing a balance sheet today with a farmer, we would write today's date on it. And the first thing we talk about on the balance sheet is what is your liquid assets, your current assets. They call them current assets. What could you turn into cash today? And most of those things include cash, or if there's an entity that owes you money within the next 30 days, animals or crops that are projected to be for sale in the next month or two, and anything that you have that you could convert to cash. And so those are the current assets. Just opposite are the current liabilities. What do you owe on the feed bill? What do you owe in property taxes that is due? Other things that you might owe under 30 days. Well, between 30 and 60. And anything else that you owe on the current assets. So if you list feed as an asset and you owe the feed company for it, you know, you have your asset, let's say 10,000 in feed, then you have your liability of 10,000 in feed if you haven't paid it yet. If you've paid it, then you don't have that corresponding liability. Intermediate assets are things like livestock, anything with a life of over a year and under, say, 10 years. Machinery, mainly livestock machinery. And on the corresponding liability, you would have, you know, whatever you owe on equipment or livestock. And those are the big ones. And then long-term is generally real estate. And if you have a mortgage, that would be the corresponding liability. So there is a balance sheet. I really like I said, the FSA balance sheet. And it's easy to work with. And I think you should do it after the program today or in the next week or two, if you don't do one, generally. So this is the balance sheet I use. And it is very nice. It's easy to work with. The other thing on these balance sheets generally are personal assets. And I think it's always good to get a handle on your personal assets and your personal liabilities. Because many times I find that, you know, there's credit card debt on furniture or credit card debt on cars or personal vehicles, that kind of thing. So once in a while, we work with farmers who get to get a better handle on their personal income and expenses, because many times that's where the credit rating trouble can come from. Student loans, you know, things that can develop into credit issues, and that affects how and at what rate you borrow at. There is another really good resource once you get that balance sheet done. It's called the Farm Finance Scorecard. And what it does, it's from the Center for Farm Financial Management from the University of Minnesota. I use this all the time. It takes your balance sheet information and it gives you ratios and measurements to put your balance sheet information on this Farm Finance Scorecard. And it would be worth it for you from a farm standpoint before you go into any other business or venture to put your numbers on this Farm Finance Scorecard, because it has 3 areas: vulnerable, which is in the red area, moderate, and strong, which is the green area. So you could find out if your current ratio is vulnerable or strong, whether you have enough working capital, whether your farm to debt asset ratio, your debt to asset ratio is in the range that you can add another enterprise. There's all kinds of things here: your repayment capacity, your financial efficiency. And I think it takes people longer to do the balance sheet than it would some of these ratios. And once you get a good handle on that, you're going to be very empowered to either say, you know, we're going to have to wait a few years till we pay down some debt before we go into this. Or you might say, boy, I'm in good financial shape. I think we could do this. So really, it is critical to, whether you're borrowing the money from yourself or your savings or from the bank down the road, really consider doing your balance sheet. I'm just telling you, you need to do it. Don't think about doing it, just do it. The partial budget is something that I call quick and dirty. You can test out an idea quickly on paper to see if a change might affect an existing business. Hence the word partial. You can do this on one sheet of paper, and you only consider the changes to the business by adding an enterprise. For example, the example in the notebook that we use is for an on-farm camping idea. So on the partial budget, you have 4 quadrants, 4 boxes on the sheet: added income, reduced cost, added cost. So there's only 4 boxes, and it's really easy to put your data in there. And then at the end, you net out the added and reduced income and the reduced cost and added cost, and you get a number, whether positive or negative. So we're just going to use this example quickly and see what you think. A beef farmer wants to start an on-farm camping business to supplement his income. The tents cost $2,000 each. The increase in the insurance is $1,000 annually. He needs to fence off the wooded area from the cattle, and the cost is $2,500. Access to the campsite needs improvement, like a better road, and that's $500. A website is necessary with photos and a way to pay in advance, like a shopping cart. So that's $3,000. The weekend fee of his competitors is $400 with weekdays at $150 each. He will need to borrow the money at 5% to get started, $9,000 at least. He intends to have freezer beef available to the customers to generate more income. So the partial budget for this venture, assuming 10 weekends and 20 weekdays. So he's not saying that he's going to be full every weekend of the year, of course. If he's in the Northeast, we have a pretty short window of when people would want to camp, especially when we have rain and snow. And 2 weekdays for the first season, and selling more beef and dropping a firewood business. Okay, so he's going to go into this camping thing, but he has an existing firewood business that he wants to get out of. So the partial budget, which is in the resources online, nets everything out. The added income, 10 weekends at $400 each is $4,000. 20 weekdays at $150 each is $3,000. So it goes on. And in the end, he drops this firewood business, which he was getting $2,500 for. That's under reduced income. But he also has less expenses for that, like $750 less. But he has more expenses for tent, insurance, fence, and everything that we talked about. So in the end, he's got to spend $9,000. His increase in income is only $83.50 the first year. But that also includes the payment that will include eventually the payment to pay that money back. So if he did borrow the $9,000 and paid back over 2 to 3 years at 5%, he would cash flow. So there's that cash flow again. Yes, he is borrowing $9,000. However, he will pay that off in 3 years, and then he will make an additional $83.50 a year, and then just have the payment after the 3 years. So it's interesting to look at, and the only way you're going to do it, maybe some people can do it in their heads. I don't suggest it. Write it down, see if it cash flows. If it doesn't, what can you do to change it? Maybe there won't be anything you can do. And at that point, you realize, maybe I shouldn't do this. Maybe I need to find something else. Or, it's just, if you don't write it down and you try to do these calculations in your head, it's never a good idea unless you're much more brilliant than most. So if you were a banker, what would you ask if you were approving the loan for $9,000? The payment is $275 a month, which seems reasonable over a 3-year period. Now, if it does look like a venture is going to be feasible, you should, if you can, shop around for interest rates. You could also add a partner, and that partner would reduce the risk for you. It would also reduce the reward at the end. But if you couldn't borrow all that money, you could add a partner. So this little chart to the right again shows, how am I going to avoid risk? Remember, you can transfer it. We talked about the insurance for this venture. You could choose a less risky idea than camping. When you invite your people to the farm and they're camping in a tent, it seems to me there's a lot of things that could happen. And some of them wouldn't really be your fault. but you might get drawn into a lawsuit. Say there's a lightning storm and somebody gets hurt, or a wild animal comes and bites someone. Now, those things are beyond your control, but at the same time, if there was a way to site that tent differently or put a fence around the area, you know, lawsuits can be they can get pretty imaginative if they want to. So if you felt this was a risky idea, you could also have campers sign off. Now, how many times have you had to sign off if you were doing something risky? Okay. So if you're going to go zip lining, there's a form that just about every zip line place has where you're going to sign your right to sue away. And, you know, it's a good idea for the owner. If you fall off the zip line or something breaks, they don't want to lose their business, but you are willing to take the risk by getting up onto the cable. So just think about that. And really risky things like horseback riding, even though people who know horses don't consider it risky, for inexperienced people, have a form for people to sign. The other thing, when you have a form, is if people are concerned that they won't be able to do it, they might just not ride the horse in the first place. You know, they acknowledge the risk. And that's one thing that you have to do with any kind of a risky venture, is make sure the people, your customers, acknowledge the risk. So anyway, let's try a partial budget for your venture. You will find one on the website, and you could just as easily make one up. Remember, it's just a quadrant: added income, reduced cost, added cost, netted out at the bottom. So you could make an assumption like the camping idea or whatever idea you have. And share your ideas with others and see if they can find a way to reduce risk in your venture or reduce expenses. So ag tourism farms are certainly very different when you compare them to production-only farms. You are interfacing with people who are coming to the farm. They may interface with animals, machines, harvesting schedules, manure, odors, and other issues. So bringing people to the farm who have not been on farms can be an eye-opener, certainly for them. But if you do start a venture with people coming to the farm, be sure to bring small groups first to find the things that you didn't think of. Now, some people think, and I was at a farm ice cream store a couple weeks ago. And last year I was there too, but this year they thought it would be great if where you pull into the parking lot, if they put these big barriers in front of the building. And I can see why they wanted to do it, because if someone were to have a problem, they wouldn't go through the window of the store or anything like that. But when I got out of the car and went where I wanted to go, directly into the store, you had to step over these barriers. And I was thinking, is there another way they could have done that? Maybe having the cars park the other way. So I was just thinking about that. I said, I don't remember these barriers last year. And if you weren't very nimble, you could trip over them a child could trip over them. And I thought, is this really good, or is it a problem? And I think the original setup of the store, when they were really thinking about this before, and hundreds of people go every day. And so I think, well, maybe they haven't really had problems, but there's an accumulation of people who are going in and out. And having parking lots, safe parking lots, is really a big deal. Just getting the people into the place. At the same time, you may have tractors coming and going. They may have to change their route. You've got, maybe it's spring and you're spreading manure. If you're doing a Mother's Day event, maybe you will change your manure spreading schedule that weekend. So just think of all these things when you're bringing groups to the farm, and make sure you try it out on small groups that you're not charging really for. You could have some kind of a small promotion just with a few targeted groups. Invite the 4-H clubs, or invite some small groups, and have them give you an evaluation. Did anybody fall? Did anybody come in contact with an animal and get bit? That kind of thing. So I really like the Handbook for Planning and Managing Agritourism and Nature Tourism. It's a thick publication, but it was done, it was from California, and I believe the author was Desmond Jolly, and he did a great job. And he gets you to consider all of the things that you could do and some of the pitfalls that have happened with risks bringing people to the farm. Also, the business planning template. I know every extension in the world has a business plan. I have one too that I like. I want you to look at that business plan and start thinking of your proposed business. You can do a partial budget, but definitely do your financial statements. Sometimes it's just an eye-opener. And a lot of times I find that people who don't have a reason to do one, maybe they have no debt, there's no bank asking for a balance sheet or anything, it gives them a really good starting point to then make the leap. And then they have more confidence. And final projections, financial projections that you should do, start putting numbers on the paper. Say, call your insurance company and say, hey, what if I do this? How much more is my insurance going to be? If I do this, how much more are my crop expenses going to be with the pumpkin operation? Or how much more? Just start putting everything down. But do some research. Don't just get these numbers out of your head. Call the insurance company. Project how much more fuel and seed you might use. Or how much is it going to cost to improve my driveway access? Access has become a big deal if you're inviting the public. Even here, even in our extensions, if we have off-site meetings, we have to go and make sure, are there barriers to get into the building? Am I having it in a public place? Is it a farm? Farms that don't generally have tours, when I organize a dairy tour, I've got to think long and hard. Is there enough parking? Can people get out of the car safely? Is there a lot of traffic? Is the barn accessible? So we do a lot in our regular work to think about that, but you need to look at your farm through the eyes of someone who may not walk that well, who may be limited physically, who is a child. So think about all those things. Also think about, if you do something, is it going to be a seasonal thing, or can you extend it through the season? All that season extension helps with cash flow. If you make an investment, can you do it inside too? A lot of schools want to go to farms. You know, they might bring buses. Can you get those kids in the off season? Can you charge $5 a head for 100 kids one day and show them your dairy operation? Can you show them how to milk cows and how it's done in the modern world? All that learning is great for them too. Because the days of what they may be reading in books may not be how it's actually happening on the farm. So anyway, the financial records, hopefully they're complete and up to date. And you will find that you will be very confident once you see those, and you'll understand more about your business. And do the key ratios, because that's going to help you see the health of your business, just like a checkup for your physical well-being. Do it for your financial well-being. And communicate with your lender and your insurance company. If you are going to do something, you've got to let them know. The worst thing that can happen is your insurance guy drives by and there's a bus full of kids. They're getting out and they're running to your farm and they're like, what is going on? I had an insurance guy get upset with a farmer when he put in a farm stand because he didn't know. And the pull-off was not that good. And the insurance company was like, he was livid because he wasn't aware, and he could have put a little rider on that for reasonable. And yes, things did happen once he realized what was going on, but try to be proactive and call them ahead of time. So what I'd like you to do before you view the next video, complete your balance sheet. I'm not saying complete all those financial ratios. You'll get the idea after you do a few, whether you're in the red, yellow, or green. And refine your idea about agritourism. And keep all those risks in the back of your mind, all the 5 risks. Communicate with your other family and farm members about what you're learning. And put together the financial piece. And come back, and the next time we'll talk about production and weather risk. So thank you for paying attention. And I'm excited that you are interested in this and learning more about risk. I can be reached at mk129@cornell.edu. If you have any questions, definitely email me. Thanks for watching.